How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for taking a bit of time out of your day today to answer some of these questions to assist me in my production of my GTPA at the end of conclusion of my last prac. Just
No
very
worries.
quickly, how long have you been teaching for?
I think around 15 or 16 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. A
And
while.
what grade do you generally teach?
Predominantly K to 2. I think I've had 1 year in my life where I've taught year 2, 3 class. But other than that, I teach K to 2, but I'm an APC&I at Rouse Public School, so that means I support teachers across K to 6. So I do have some insight into the stage 2 and stage 3 curriculum.
Great. And so I'm just going to kick off with the first question of how do you use data to inform your decisions for planning and teaching a teaching cycle?
Okay, so usually there's some kind of pre-data, whether it be like a really formal type of assessment. The department has a lot of support in the assessment space at the moment. So, for example, if I was doing something in maths, I might do what we call an IFSA, which is an interview for student reasoning, in the area that I'm looking at, number and place value. That information will then spit into a program that we have called, or a database that we've got called Plan 2. Yeah. And in Plan 2, it'll have, there's 4 different ways that the assessment will show up. And that's like either it hasn't been, that aspect hasn't been assessed, it's partially demonstrated, it's demonstrated, or if we know it is consolidated, we'll pop in consolidated there. So then what we're looking for is in the classroom, what areas are most students looking at partially demonstrated? Yeah. And that's because if we're looking at partially demonstrated, that's usually within their zone of proximal development. Yeah, yeah. Whereas if it's in the red or in the dark pink, that's just too much for them at the moment. We'll just leave that for now. But where it's partially demonstrated, then we can put in some explicit teaching around that.
Yeah, to build on that. Obviously, there's knowledge there, and you can build on that knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, but it's not too hard. Yeah. Yeah.
And do you plan for general capabilities and cross-curricular incorporation prior to engaging in that cycle, or during, or or do you adjust it as you go and add those?
So I would say as I go. So if I work through the teaching and learning cycle, the first part is where are my students now, but I'm looking really specifically at where are they in terms of a component of reading. So it could be phonics, it could be phonological awareness, it could be fluency, it could be vocab. So I'll look more specifically at that. Then what do I want my students to learn? I'll go into the aforementioned plan. Plan is just where your progressions sit, and I'll look at what are this is a word, demonstrable. So the demonstrable skills, that's how they say it. So anything that you can actually see, the children can demonstrate it, you can see it. Yeah. What do I want my students to learn? I'm looking at what it is that they don't know, but that's just within their zone of proximal development. And then in that, how will my students get there? That's when I might start to look around at the cross-curricular capabilities, because that's when I'll be looking at my units of work and how I'm going to adjust them to suit the context of my classroom or the learners that I've got or the resources that I've got. Yeah,
sure. How do you plan lessons to incorporate engaging teaching strategies?
The first thing I'd say about that is at the moment with the department, you've probably heard lots of people talking about units of work. Or sample units of work, and lots of schools are engaging in that material, but sometimes you'll get a little bit of feedback that, oh, they're boring or the kids don't like them. But what I say to that is that's our job. That's our job to contextualise that for our class so that it will be engaging. But there's a couple of things on top of that, like are the activities age appropriate? Are you using a range of strategies? And contrary to popular belief, you know how sometimes people say, oh, you have a lot of variance in the types of strategies or the resources that you use, things like that. In actual fact, I just think anything, particularly for retrieval practice, anything low stakes
Yeah.
or anything that's low variance is good, because that supports cognitive load. You don't want to be introducing a new routine or a new activity or a new strategy
sure.
every single day. You'll be thinking, oh, that's great because it's mixing it up a bit. But in actual fact, low stakes, low variance, kids
Yeah.
know the routine. All you're changing is just the challenge of the task that you're doing, not the activity itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great advice. How do you make judgments on quality of student work and engage in moderation practices?
So for at a small school, we don't have a stage. I am my stage. I'm the only teacher on early stage 1. There's only one teacher on stage 1. There's only one teacher on stage 2, etc. So we don't have a stage. Often in a bigger school, you'll get together, you'll bring work samples, you'll have a look at them, you'll decide based on that. But universally, what we'll all bring to that meeting is, and this is what we do in our context where it's just us, you're looking at your syllabus, obviously, what's expected from them at that stage. If they're not meeting that, then obviously they're working below. The progressions, like I mentioned before, they pretty much break up all of the content points in the syllabus and like I said, give you those skills that you can see students demonstrating.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we do have, which I can send to you later if you want to have a look at it a bit more, is a progressions and a syllabus mapping tool. Now, that wasn't put out by the department, but it was put out by a couple of Lennox, their literacy and numeracy instructional coaches, that told us if you're in early stage 1 and you're working within these progressions, then you're working at. If you're working in these progressions, you're working above. So there's some guidance there. And in addition to that, obviously, what are your learning intentions? Like I mentioned, the teaching and learning cycle before. What is it that you wanted the students to know from this? Do they know it or do they not?
Yeah.
In addition to that, you've got to decide whether or not there's a level of, like, there can be human error. Like, if it's a task designed by me, did the task actually allow opportunities to show what it is that I thought the kids would be able to show?
Yeah.
But with a department assessment or a department type work sample, it will be built into it what to expect and what a student working at this stage should be achieved.
I guess that moderation in a small school scenario for you would be like, you know, as the children progress from your classes up into the classes above, the discussions between, the collaboration between you and the teachers who are taking the kids, you know, onto the next stage of their learning.
Yeah, and we call that handover, but we also I do in my APC and I role, K-6 data. So we have, have you heard of Gutman charts before?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we take a Gutman chart from K-6, and each term teachers are updating data every week 5 and week 10. Based on what they're seeing in their classroom, based on the observations that they're making. So sometimes you see TJ as professional judgment as well. Yeah. They're noticing that. And so by the end of the year, I've got term 1 data, term 2 data, term 3 data, term 4 data, and I can filter it out. So I can click on one child, I can click on Lennox Seymour, and I can see like number 1, a score. So we might have went from 41 influency to 65 influency by the end of the year, but it'll also show me the indicators where he showed growth. It'll show me the indicators that he's fully consolidated. It'll show me the where to next for him.
Fantastic. So finally, Kel, how do you measure the impact your teaching is having on student learning?
Well, I mean, there's the data side of things, obviously, like I just mentioned with the Gutman analysis. Yeah. But also, I think it actually is more than that, and it's bigger than that, because you've got a whole child that you're educating. So yeah, sure. You can have a child, like I've got one who comes to me, we do Stream Spelling Mastery. I have the year 1s, really, it's the A book, it's the first book, but I actually have a year 2 child who comes down into that spelling mastery group. Yeah. Now I could look at him and go, oh, he's in year 2. He's done this book 3 times now. He should be in the B book, and we could just evaluate it based on that, like we're not having an impact.
Yeah.
Or we can go, oh my goodness, and we are having an impact. I've got data to measure that now, like his spelling. We do
Yeah,
every
sure.
5 lesson spelling test. He's showing growth. But the impact I see in him now is his confidence, his willingness to answer a question, how quickly he can finish things now, and the fact that
Yeah.
he can support his peers if he needs to. So the impact is, yeah, data driven. He's got these skills, but also it's a self-concept. And
Yeah,
he sees
sure.
himself. He sees himself as a learner now. He
Yeah.
sees himself as a speller.
And they
now.
all those aspects contribute to him being a better learner, don't they? Because it draws
Oh.
confidence and
Success breeds success. So
Yeah.
he's having success now. So he's just going from stride to stride.
yeah. Now, look, that time's gone extremely quick, but just quickly, what are the favourite aspects of your job? Your favourite aspects of your job?
So cliche, but how fun is it to hang out with 5 and 6 year olds all day, because they see the world through such a fun, innocent lens.
Yeah,
That's number one. But if we're talking my impact on teaching, particularly in kindergarten, you come in at the beginning of the year with a bunch of kids who have so much background knowledge, but usually no one can read and no one can write. And then at the end of the year, you're sending them on to year 1 and they can all read and they can all write.
Yeah, that'd be pretty
it's-
special.
It is. It's quite egocentric, but it is really nice because it's impact that you can see that you've had.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well,
Yeah.
that's wonderful, Miss Allen. Thank you very much for spending that short amount of time with us to give us some of the insights of your teaching, and obviously very skillful teacher that you are. And take care and thank you.
You're welcome.